Good morning, lovely people. Have you ever had a case of deja vu? Have you ever had a case of deja vu? Well, yes, it's me again for part 2 of this trio of January talks. Now, we ended last week firmly planted in the darkness of the January blues, and in response to Kelly Jones's question, what's worth waiting for, I suggested that maybe the darkness we experience in life is actually worth exploring and not rushing on from. But does darkness actually exist? Well, here's what the internet says. No. Okay, it did say a little bit more than that. It said darkness isn't a thing in itself. It's the absence of light. It's a physical concept. But it's also a real human experience and a metaphor for negative states like hopelessness or evil. So on one hand, it isn't real, but on the other hand, it very much is. Interesting. Right, here's a riddle for you then. What am I? I follow you all day long, but disappear when the sun is gone. I'm tall in the morning and short at noon. I disappear at night, but will be back soon. I fear the light, I am the dark. I walk your stride, yet leave no mark. What am I? Well, today I'd like us to consider the darkness that we're kind of involved in creating ourselves, our shadow. And to do this, my second unlikely character to help us is Wendy Darling. No, not Wendy Darling, but Wendy Darling with a capital D, from the famous children's story Peter Pan. Recently, I've discovered that Peter Pan is not just a whimsical tale of adventure and make-believe, but there are many hidden meanings. The author, James Matthew Barrie, embedded his own experiences and darker themes into the story, exploring his grief over his brother's sudden death at the age of 14, the fear of aging, loneliness, and complex feelings about childhood and parental roles. Who knew? Well, Pan is the boy who refuses to grow up. He believes to do so means facing vulnerability and accepting responsibility. And Neverland is an attractive escape from the real world, but it's a denial of the truth that human existence involves growth and change, and I would add, darkness. The story starts with Peter losing his shadow, and so losing the part of him that is tethered to reality. Because unless you're in a place with no light source at all, or you're fully transparent, then we all have a shadow. And for any pedants out there, it's also the case if the sun is directly overhead, but technically you still have a shadow, it's just underneath you. In psychological terms, the shadow represents the unconscious, hidden aspects of the self that we avoid confronting. This can include our fears, our suppressed desires, our insecurities, everything that we bury beneath the surface of who we think we are. But if we avoid facing them, we remain emotionally stunted. And rather than it diminishing, this shadow self festers and grows. Wendy, in the story, attempts to sew Peter's shadow back onto him, trying to bring him back into reality, to tether him to the grounded experiences of life. She knows the shadow cannot be ignored, but must be integrated to experience the fullness of life with all its joys and sorrows, to actually be at greater peace with ourselves and those around us. To our Bible story then, for Mary, Martha and Jesus, all three are faced with the huge shadow of the death of Lazarus. But perhaps the darkest shadow, for the sisters at least, is that of their relationship with Jesus. The man that they've seen miraculously heal complete strangers. The man they've specifically called to come and heal their sick brother. The brother that he said he loved, and the sisters that he claims to love. But he didn't come, and he didn't heal. Does he not care? Does he not love? Can he not be trusted after all? Put yourself in their sandals. Maybe this echoes some of your own story. So what does it look like to face and embrace this monster of a shadow? Well, here's what it doesn't look like. Stewing it over in our heads, making all sorts of assumptions about the other person. They didn't forget me, they ignored me. They didn't do that or say that harmlessly. They meant it with malice to hurt me. You see, we often assume someone's intentions based on the impact of their actions. If it impacted us negatively, then the intention must have been negative. And have you also noticed how we assume the best of ourselves, but the worst of others? We justify our poor behaviour, but when someone else does the exact same thing, it's because they're inherently a bad person. The fancy term for this is called the fundamental attribution error. It's worth looking up. But none of this, though, is actually facing your shadow. And yet it's often my default, and maybe it's yours too. Now, we don't know what went on in Mary and Martha's head, but we do know that they do speak to Jesus when he shows up. They tell him what they'd expected to happen, and that these expectations weren't met. If you had been here, my brother would not have died. That's pretty honest, isn't it? They owned their thoughts and feelings and verbalised them. And they weren't just saying their piece and storming off. Maybe they were still coming with open but broken hearts to wrestle with the questions, not ending the relationship with Jesus, but saying, "You disappointed us. Help us understand." And Jesus' response is not detached, cold, or distant. He steps into their grief. He experiences it. But he's also seeing something very different going on in the situation too. And here is where we'll go next week. For now, though, where are we left? In the messy middle? Well, perhaps. But much like last week, this is maybe not as bad a place to be as you might think. Think about what we said and saw at the start. Darkness is the absence of light. So for a shadow to exist, there must be at least some source of light. And if Wendy teaches us to integrate our shadow, then what are we integrating it into, if not its counterpart, light? So let me end by sharing some of my story with you. I currently have 1,415 notes saved on my phone, and 2 of these at least are lists. One is titled Grief and Loss Experiences, and the other is Remembering and Thanksgiving. The first contains the experiences of my life that have caused me pain and sadness, and this is by no means an exhaustive list. But it's things like my brother suffering a breakdown when I was 12, and that relationship changing forever. Like one of my sisters going into foster care and the counselling that we went through as a family to restore relationships. Like my close friend dying in a motorbike accident when I was 19. Like the 3 miscarriages that myself and my wife have experienced. Like the illness of my son that nearly took his life at only 4 months old. And the ongoing treatment that he still needs. Like being made redundant and not knowing where the next paycheck was coming from. Like walking through other people's pain and horrendous situations as a church pastor and being unable to fix them. And none of this makes me particularly unique. Everyone will have such a list because this is what life looks like in our broken world. My second list is recording all the times that I have seen the hand of God at work and good things that have happened and that have brought peace. And this list is much, much longer. But almost every entry is a situation that I would rather not have gone through or that looked bleak at the start. Indeed, many of the things I mentioned in the first list appear here too. How my son did not die, how the treatment and operations he's had have completely turned things around, how I've never been without enough money to pay the bills, and how new job opportunities came up literally out of the blue. How I've learnt so much through all these experiences. How often what felt like death turned out to be the start of something new, life even. And there's plenty that still remains painful, and there's so much that I don't have answers for. The losses and the grief don't just disappear, they remain, but some of them are now mixed with sweetness, intermingled with the sour. Some memories can make me smile as much as they still make me cry. And this, I believe, is the journey of embracing the shadows and bringing our pain to Jesus. All I can do is encourage you to do the same. Allow your eyes to adjust in the darkness and start to see the shadows, because this means there is a light somewhere. Next week, we're going to draw things to a start with the help of a little blue steam engine. God bless.